You saved my child from drowning. Now, by ancient law, you are my husband. The sun was just beginning to rise over the small village of Riverview, casting golden streaks of light across the calm river. Birds sang softly in the trees, and the early morning mist gave the place a magical, almost dreamlike quality. It was one of those mornings that felt peaceful and ordinary, but, as sometimes happens in life, extraordinary events can emerge from the most ordinary moments. Laura, a young mother in her late 20s, stepped carefully along the narrow path that ran beside the river. She held her little son, Noah, by the hand, keeping him close as they walked. Noah was just 5 years old, a lively little boy with curly hair that seemed to catch the sunlight like strands of gold. He loved exploring, asking endless questions, and finding joy in the simplest things: stones, flowers, or the sound of the river water rushing past. "Look, Mama!" Noah shouted excitedly, pointing to a cluster of ducks swimming nearby. He tugged at her hand, urging her to follow him to the riverbank. Lara smiled, her heart swelling with love for her curious little boy. She always encouraged Noah to enjoy nature, even though she worried about his safety. After all, the river, while beautiful, could be dangerous, especially for a child as adventurous as Noah. "I'll watch you, sweetheart, but stay close," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Noah nodded, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He ran a few steps ahead, picking up small pebbles to throw into the water, laughing as they made tiny splashes. Lara followed slowly, keeping one hand on his small back to make sure he didn't get too close to the river's edge. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Noah slipped. His little feet lost grip on the wet grass, and before Lara could reach him, he tumbled toward the river. The current was stronger than it looked in the calm morning light, and in a moment that felt like slow motion, Noah disappeared under the water. Lara's scream echoed through the trees. She lunged toward the riverbank, her heart pounding in terror. She reached out desperately, her fingers brushing against the water, but it was too late. The current carried Noah a few feet away, and his tiny arms flailed as he struggled to stay afloat. Time seemed to stop for Lara. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and panic. "No! Not my son! Please, someone help!" she thought, her voice trembling with desperation. She tried to jump into the river herself, but the bank was slippery, and the current was too strong. She was frozen with fear, unsure what to do next. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a voice shouted from behind her, "Hold on! I'm coming!" Lara turned and saw a man running toward the river. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a determined look in his eyes. His movements were confident, and despite the danger, he didn't hesitate. Without a moment's thought, he dove into the cold, rushing water. The man's name was Ethan, a traveler passing through Riverview. He had heard the scream from a distance and instinctively ran toward the sound, his heart pounding. As he reached the river, he saw the little boy struggling in the current. Without hesitating, he plunged in, fighting against the river's strength. Ethan's arms cut through the water with practiced determination. He grabbed Noah just in time, pulling him toward the riverbank. The boy was coughing and spluttering, terrified but safe in Ethan's strong grip. With great effort, Ethan hauled Noah out of the water and onto the grass. The little boy was shaking, his small body trembling from the shock and cold. Lara rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. She fell to her knees beside her son, holding him close. "No, thank God!" "You're safe," she cried, pressing her lips to his wet hair. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes wide with gratitude and disbelief. "You saved him. You saved my child," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Ethan, still catching his breath from the struggle, nodded humbly. "Is he okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Yes, thanks to you," Lara replied, her hands still trembling as she held her son. She couldn't find words strong enough to express her gratitude. She looked around and saw villagers gathering, drawn by the commotion. They whispered among themselves, impressed by the bravery of the stranger who had risked his life to save a child. Ethan finally stood up, dripping wet and exhausted, but there was a calmness in his eyes. He handed Noah back to his mother, gently ensuring the boy was stable. Lara thanked him again, her voice filled with warmth and awe. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. "No need to repay me. I'm just glad he's safe." There was a quiet sincerity in his words that touched Lara deeply. He seemed like someone who acted out of pure kindness, not expecting anything in return. The villagers continued to murmur among themselves. In a small village like Riverview, news traveled fast, and heroic acts like this were never forgotten. Some of the elders nodded knowingly, as if understanding that this was not just a simple act of bravery, but something that might carry consequences far beyond the riverbank. Lara helped Noah to his feet, wrapping a blanket around him to warm him up. She looked at Ethan again, really looking at him for the first time. He was not only strong and brave, but had a gentle, reassuring presence. There was something about him that felt important. She couldn't explain it yet, but her heart felt lighter even after the terrifying experience. As the morning unfolded, Lara introduced herself to Ethan properly. They exchanged small talk, sharing where they were from and how they had come to be at the river at that exact moment. Noah, still shivering but recovering quickly, clung to his mother, occasionally glancing at Ethan with a shy smile. The air was filled with a strange mix of relief, excitement, and curiosity. Something about the river that morning had changed everything. Lara couldn't stop thinking about how close she had come to losing her son, and how a complete stranger had saved him without hesitation. The gratitude she felt was overwhelming, and she silently promised herself that she would never forget this man, no matter what the future held. Meanwhile, Ethan began to dry off, using a spare jacket he carried. He noticed the villagers watching him with a mix of admiration and caution. In Riverview, traditions ran deep, and heroism was often tied to the old ways. He sensed there was more to this event than just the immediate rescue. Something about the villagers' looks suggested that this act might not be over in the way he expected. Despite the excitement and relief, a small seed of tension was planted that morning by the river. Neither Lara nor Ethan realized it yet, but the simple act of saving a life was about to intertwine their fates in ways they could never have imagined. The river, which had been a place of danger and fear, had now become the starting point of a story that would change both of their lives forever. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the village, Lara walked with Noah back to their home, Ethan following at a polite distance. The boy held tightly to his mother, glancing at the stranger who had saved him. He didn't know the full story yet, but he instinctively felt that Ethan was a good man, someone safe and kind. When they reached Lara's small cottage by the river, she invited Ethan inside for tea, insisting on thanking him properly. Ethan hesitated for a moment but then accepted. The conversation was filled with laughter and relief, though both felt a subtle awareness that something significant had happened. A connection had been formed that could not be easily undone. By the time Ethan left to continue his journey through Riverview, the story of his bravery had already spread. Villagers spoke in hushed tones about the stranger who had saved a child, and some of the older villagers exchanged knowing glances. In small communities, actions like this were never forgotten. Lara sat by the window that evening, looking out at the river. Her heart still raced when she thought about the moment Noah had fallen in, but she also felt a strange warmth when she thought of Ethan, the man who had risked everything to save her son. She did not yet understand what the future held, but she knew that her life, and Noah's, had been touched in a way that was impossible to ignore. That night, as Lara tucked Noah into bed, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. She felt that somehow this day marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Though she could not yet see the path ahead, the river had taken her fear and given her hope, and the stranger who had jumped into its waters had unknowingly become part of her story forever. The first part of their journey had ended, but the story itself was only beginning. Lara would soon learn that bravery, gratitude, and the power of tradition could change everything, and that sometimes the simplest act of kindness could lead to the most unexpected of fates. The day after Noah's near drowning, the village of Riverview was buzzing with whispers and speculation. Word of Ethan's heroic act had spread quickly, and people were still talking about the man who had risked his life to save a child. Some praised him endlessly, calling him brave and selfless. Others, however, exchanged nervous glances and murmured quietly about old traditions, laws and customs that had guided the village for centuries. Lara had spent the morning tending to Noah, making sure he was warm, dry, and well-fed. The little boy had recovered quickly, his cheerful energy returning as he played with his toys and asked endless questions about the river, the ducks, and the stranger who had saved him. Lara, meanwhile, tried to process everything herself. She was grateful beyond words for Ethan, but something about the villagers' looks made her uneasy. By mid-morning, a group of village elders arrived at Lara's small home. They were older men and women, dressed in simple traditional clothes, their faces serious but calm. Their presence made Lara feel both respect and apprehension. These elders had guided the village for decades, and their words carried weight in every household. "Lara," said Elder Miriam, a kind but firm woman, "we come to speak with you about what happened yesterday." Her eyes met Lara's, and there was a mixture of solemnity and expectation in her gaze. "Yes, of course," Lara replied, rising from her chair. She led them into the sitting area, where Noah was quietly coloring at the corner of the room. She tried to smile, but her heart was racing. She could feel that this conversation would change things in ways she could not yet imagine. Elder Miriam took a deep breath. The boy was saved because of the bravery of the stranger, Ethan. He acted without hesitation, and we are grateful. But As you know, Riverview has old laws, ancient laws that have guided our people for generations. Ancient laws. What do you mean? Another Elder Thomas, stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. There is a law, centuries old, that applies to this situation. It states, if someone saves a child from drowning in our village, that person is bound to the parent by marriage. Her mind could not immediately process the words. Marriage? What are you saying? Her voice trembled, and she clutched Noah's small hand instinctively. Elder Miriam explained patiently. It is an old tradition, dating back hundreds of years. It is meant to honor those who risk their lives to save another. It is also a way to ensure that those who protect our children are respected and included in the lives they have saved. The law is clear, because Ethan saved Noah. The law recognizes him as your future husband.
Lara shook her head in disbelief, but...
That can't be right. I don't even know him. He's a stranger. How can a law force me to marry someone I barely met? The elder's expression softened, though they remained firm. We understand your fear, Laura, Elder Miriam said gently, but this law is not new. It has always been a part of Riverview. You cannot ignore it. It is not meant to harm, only to guide. If the law is followed, you will honor both your son's life and the village's traditions. Lara's mind swirled with confusion and worry. She thought of Noah and how close he had come to dying. She thought of Ethan, the kind man who had risked his life without expecting anything in return. And now she was being told that a simple act of bravery could bind her life to his forever. Later that day, Lara found herself standing by the riverbank again, the same place where Noah had almost been swept away. The river was calm now, reflecting the sky like a mirror. She ran her fingers through the cool water, thinking of how fragile life could be and how one moment could change everything. Ethan appeared nearby. Having returned to check on Noah, he noticed Lara staring at the river, her expression troubled. Are you all right? He asked gently. Lara looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know, she admitted. The elders told me about the law. About marriage. I don't understand how this can happen. Ethan's face reflected concern. I understand. I never expected this. I only wanted to save your son. He paused, thinking carefully. I don't want to make you uncomfortable or force anything. We need to figure this out together, and I will respect whatever you decide. Lara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Ethan's calm and thoughtful nature could help her navigate this impossible situation. She realized that despite the strangeness of the law, she did not feel angered toward him. Instead, she felt admiration and gratitude mixed with fear for what the future might hold. In the following days, villagers began to treat Ethan differently. Children ran to greet him, calling him hero, and neighbors offered food and gifts as thanks. But there were also quiet reminders, glances, small comments, and subtle gestures, that the law was not something to ignore. Lara felt torn between gratitude, obligation, and the desire for personal freedom. One afternoon, Elder Thomas visited Lara again. You must consider your position carefully, he said. The law is not cruel, but it is binding. If you reject Ethan outright, it will create tension in the village and could bring misfortune. But if you approach this with an open heart, you may find that what seems frightening can also become a source of strength and happiness. Lara listened silently, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. She wondered about Ethan's thoughts, about the life she had known before this incident, and about the future she could never have imagined. Meanwhile, Ethan tried to help in small ways. He fixed a broken fence near Lara's home, fetched water for her garden, and played gently with Noah, teaching him how to skip stones across the river. His presence was quiet but steady, and slowly, Lara began to see him as more than a stranger. His bravery had been extraordinary, but his kindness in ordinary moments was just as remarkable. Despite her growing admiration, Lara could not ignore the pressure of the law. Each conversation with the elders, each glance from the villagers, reminded her that the ancient tradition was very real. She felt caught between two worlds, the modern desire for choice and freedom, and the deep-rooted customs of her village. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Lara sat on the porch with Noah playing nearby. Ethan had gone home for the day, but the memory of his calm strength stayed with her. She realized that, in some strange way, she was beginning to feel safe with him. He had saved her son, yes, but he had also shown patience, respect, and humility, qualities she admired deeply. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Elder Miriam. She handed Lara a small leather-bound book. This is the village's record of traditions, she explained. It explains the law in detail. If you read it carefully, you may understand its purpose, and perhaps find a way to make peace with it. Laura opened the book slowly, flipping through pages filled with handwritten notes and illustrations of rivers, children, and heroic deeds. As she read, she began to see the law not as a punishment or a trap, but as a form of honor. It was meant to protect children and recognize those who risked everything for them. And somehow, she realized, it could also be a bridge between two people brought together by fate. That night, Lara lay awake, thinking about Ethan. She thought about the river, about Noah's laughter, and about the strange twists of life that brought strangers into her world. She did not yet know what she would decide, but a part of her began to wonder if this unexpected bond could become something more than obligation. Perhaps it could become friendship, trust, and eventually love. Little did Lara know that this was only the beginning. The law had been invoked, and now the threads of their lives were tied together in ways neither of them could yet fully understand. The coming days would challenge their patience, courage, and hearts in ways neither could predict. But for now, the river flowed calmly, the village watched quietly, and two lives, once separate, were beginning to converge in the most unexpected of ways. And as Lara drifted into a restless sleep, she could not help but feel that fate, mysterious and powerful, had only just begun to write their story. The following morning, the sun rose over Riverview, casting a warm golden glow across the village. The river sparkled under the early light, calm and beautiful as if nothing had ever happened. Yet for Lara, the events of the previous days weighed heavily on her mind. The ancient law hung over her like a shadow, an invisible thread tying her life to Ethan's, a stranger whose actions had changed everything in an instant. Ethan, meanwhile, was quietly helping with chores around the village. Word of his heroism had made him a welcomed guest, though he remained humble and unassuming. He had stayed in Riverview longer than he had planned, partly because the river had swelled after the recent rain, making travel dangerous, and partly because he felt a sense of responsibility toward Noah and Lara. That morning, as Lara prepared breakfast, she glanced out the window and saw Ethan helping villagers repair a broken fence near the market square. His movements were confident and careful, his demeanor calm. For the first time, she allowed herself to see him not just as the stranger who saved her son, but as a man with patience, skill, and quiet strength. Later, when Ethan arrived at her home to check on Noah, Lara felt an unexpected mix of emotions: gratitude, respect, and something she did not yet understand. Noah ran to him eagerly, his small hands reaching for Ethan's. "You're back," he exclaimed. "Can you show me how to skip stones again?" Ethan smiled warmly, lifting Noah onto his shoulders. "Of course, little one, but only if you promise to be careful this time." He set him down by the river bank, picking up a smooth stone. "Watch closely," he said, demonstrating how to skip the stone across the water. Lara stood a few steps away, her arms crossed, observing quietly. She felt her heart relax slightly as she watched the two of them. Ethan's gentle nature with her son reassured her in ways words could not. The villagers, meanwhile, continued to observe the growing connection between Lara and Ethan. Some whispered in excitement while others frowned, reminding themselves of the law's binding nature. The subtle pressure of tradition was constant, and Lara felt it keenly. Each glance, each conversation, seemed to carry an unspoken expectation. Over the next few days, Lara and Ethan found themselves spending more time together, often out of necessity. They repaired fences, fetched water, and ran errands for the village. At first, the interactions were awkward. Lara was polite, but distant, and Ethan was careful to respect her boundaries. But as time passed, small moments of genuine connection began to emerge. One afternoon, while collecting herbs near the edge of the river, Lara slipped on a muddy path. Ethan was immediately there, steadying her with a firm hand. "Careful," he said, concern etched on his face. Lara felt her cheeks flush. She had not expected him to notice, let alone help so instinctively. "I'm fine," she replied, trying to sound casual, though her heart raced. "I can see that, but it doesn't hurt to be careful," Ethan said, giving her a small, reassuring smile. In that moment, Lara realized that his presence was no longer just comforting. It felt necessary. She found herself noticing little things about him. The way he listened, the way he worked, and the way he treated everyone with respect. Despite the growing warmth between them, tension lingered. Lara was constantly aware of the law and the expectations of the village. She struggled with the idea that her future might be dictated by tradition rather than choice. Ethan, too, sensed the weight of the situation. He did not want to impose, but he could not ignore the bond that had formed through their shared experiences. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Lara and Ethan found themselves walking along the riverbank. Noah ran ahead, collecting stones for skipping. The air was cool and filled with the scent of the river and the trees. "This law," Lara began hesitantly, breaking the comfortable silence. "It feels impossible. How can I be expected to marry someone I barely know?" "It's frightening," Ethan nodded, understanding her fear. "I know," he said quietly. "I never expected this either. I only wanted to help your son. But now, I'm here, and I want to do what's right. Not because of the law, but because I care about you and Noah." Lara looked at him, her eyes searching his. For the first time, she saw sincerity that went beyond the obligations of tradition. I don't know what to think," she admitted. "Everything is happening so fast. The law, the villagers, you, it's overwhelming." Ethan paused, then spoke gently. "You don't have to make a decision right now. We can take it one day at a time. I respect you, and I will not rush you. We will figure this out together." His words, calm and patient, eased some of Lara's anxiety. She realized that perhaps she was not as alone in this as she had feared. The law had brought them together, yes, but Ethan's presence was something she could choose to accept, or not. And for the first time since Noah's accident, she felt a small sense of hope. As the days passed, Lara began to notice more of Ethan's quiet heroism. He helped the elderly with chores, taught the village children small lessons about safety, and always treated everyone with kindness. Noah adored him, and seeing her son's happiness made Lara's heart soften. Yet moments of awkwardness remained. They shared meals in silence sometimes, each unsure how to bridge the gap between gratitude and friendship. Villagers continued to remind them subtly of the law, their eyes filled with expectation. Lara struggled to reconcile her growing admiration for Ethan with her desire for independence. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Lara's hand slipped, and she cut herself slightly on a sharp piece of wood. Ethan immediately cleaned the wound and bandaged it with care. "You need to be more careful," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I didn't expect you to be here," Lara said, feeling a rush of gratitude and something else she couldn't name. "I'm here because I care," Ethan replied simply. His calm confidence and concern made Lara's heart flutter. She realized that he was no longer just the stranger who had saved Noah. He was someone reliable, someone patient, and someone who might become more than she had ever imagined. As the sun set, they walked back toward Lara's home, the river reflecting the orange and pink hues of the sky. Noah ran ahead, laughing and skipping stones, unaware of the complex emotions swirling between the two adults. Lara and Ethan exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the connection growing between them. That evening, as Lara prepared dinner, she found herself thinking about Ethan constantly. She remembered his bravery, his kindness, and his gentle words. She realized that while the law had brought them together, it was his character that was making her reconsider her feelings. She felt a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement, unsure of what the future held but unable to ignore the pull she felt toward him. Ethan, too, found himself reflecting on the day. He thought about Lara's strength, her love for her son, and the way she had navigated the village's expectations. He admired her resilience and felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just because of the law, but because he genuinely cared for her and Noah. The river continued to flow quietly, witnessing the subtle changes in their hearts. What had begun as a terrifying accident was slowly transforming into something more profound. The bond formed through courage, gratitude, and shared experience was beginning to deepen, even if neither Lara nor Ethan fully understood it yet. By the end of the week, the village had grown accustomed to seeing Lara and Ethan together. Children ran to greet him, neighbors exchanged knowing smiles, and the elders observed silently, approving the slow but steady bond forming between them. Lara felt the weight of the law less heavily now, replaced by a cautious curiosity about what might happen if she allowed herself to trust Ethan. Though uncertainty remained, one thing was clear. Their lives were intertwined, and the days ahead would bring challenges, choices, and perhaps unexpected joy. Lara had begun to see Ethan not only as the hero who saved her son, but as someone whose presence could bring comfort, support, and perhaps even love. The river, once a symbol of danger, now seemed to reflect possibility, a quiet promise that life could change in an instant, that courage and kindness could forge connections, and that even traditions rooted in centuries-old laws could bring people together in ways that were surprising, powerful, and beautiful. And so, as the stars appeared over Riverview that night, Lara lay in bed, thinking about Ethan, the river, and the strange twisting path that had brought them together. She did not yet know what the future would hold, but for the first time since Noah's accident, she felt a spark of hope, curiosity, and anticipation. Their story was far from over, and the coming days would test their hearts in ways neither could yet imagine. The days in Riverview passed quietly at first. But Lara could feel the pressure of the ancient law more with each passing moment. Though she admired Ethan's courage and kindness, she still struggled with the idea that her life might be bound to his. The thought made her anxious. She valued freedom and choice above all, and the law, though meant to honor, felt like a cage. Early one morning, Lara decided she needed to seek answers. She wanted clarity and perhaps a way to challenge the law. She visited the village council hall, a small wooden building where the elders held meetings. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old wood and parchment, and the walls were lined with records of village history. "Elder Miriam," Lara began, her voice steady despite the fear twisting in her stomach, "I need to understand this law fully. Is it truly binding? Can I really be forced to marry a man I barely know?" Elder Miriam looked at her kindly, though her expression remained serious. "The law is not meant to force anyone against their will, Lara," she said. "It is meant to guide, to honor those who save a life, and to protect the family and village. But it is binding in the sense that the villagers will expect it to be honored. If you refuse entirely, it may cause tension. The law was written long ago to ensure that acts of bravery were respected and rewarded." Lara listened, feeling a mixture of frustration and fear. She wanted to honor Ethan's bravery without giving up her autonomy. She wanted freedom, but she also wanted to do what was right. The conflict tore at her heart. As she walked home along the river, she saw Ethan in the distance, helping villagers repair a collapsed bridge. The sight made her pause. Despite the law, he was humble and gentle, acting without expectation. She felt a pang of guilt for doubting him. Perhaps he did not see the law as a burden, but as a duty he was willing to fulfill out of respect. Ethan noticed her standing there and waved, a small smile on his face. Lara forced a smile back but felt her heart racing. She knew that she could not deny her growing admiration for him, even if she was still afraid of the law's consequences. The next day, as Lara went about her chores, she heard a scream from the riverbank. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound, her heart pounding. When she arrived, she saw that Noah had wandered too close to the water while chasing a rabbit. The river, though calm, had a strong undertow, and Noah was struggling to keep his balance. Ethan was already there, reaching for the boy. Lara's chest tightened in fear, but she trusted him completely. He grabbed Noah just in time, holding him firmly while calming him with gentle words. Lara ran to them, tears welling in her eyes. "You saved him again," she whispered, her voice trembling. She looked at Ethan with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "I don't know what I would do without you." Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and serious. "I'll always protect him, and you." "That's what matters," he said. His words were simple, but they carried weight. Lara felt a warmth in her chest she could not ignore. That evening, Lara could not stop thinking about what had happened. She realized that her resistance to the law was not just about fear of obligation, it was about protecting her heart. But how could she deny that Ethan had proven himself trustworthy, caring, and brave? She began to see that perhaps the law had brought them together for a reason. Over the next few days, Lara allowed herself to spend more time with Ethan, though she still struggled with her feelings. They repaired fences together, gathered firewood, and walked along the river. Each small act of companionship strengthened their bond. Lara found herself laughing more, feeling safer, and even enjoying the presence of the man she had once considered a stranger. One afternoon, while gathering herbs in the woods, Lara twisted her ankle on a hidden root. She fell to the ground, wincing in pain. Ethan was immediately at her side, helping her to stand and examining her ankle. "You need to rest," he said firmly. "Come back with me. I'll make sure you're safe." Lara hesitated, embarrassed by her weakness. "I can walk. I don't want to trouble you," she said. "You're not troubling me," Ethan replied. "I'm here because I care. That's what matters." Reluctantly, Lara allowed him to support her as they walked back to her home. Along the way, they talked quietly about the village, Noah, and the river. For the first time, Lara felt a sense of peace. She realized that Ethan's presence was no longer just comforting. It was necessary. That evening, as Ethan helped bandage her ankle, Lara's mind wandered to the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. She thought about the river, about Noah's safety, and about the growing trust she felt toward this man. She realized that her fear of the law was slowly being replaced by a sense of connection and understanding. The turning point came a few days later during a village celebration. There was music, dancing, and laughter, but a sudden accident occurred. A small fire broke out near the festival decorations, and panic spread among the villagers. Lara froze, unsure what to do. Without hesitation, Ethan sprang into action. He guided children and adults to safety, helping to extinguish the flames with water buckets and calm directions. Lara watched in awe as he moved with purpose, courage, and a calm confidence that reassured everyone around him. After the fire was controlled, villagers praised Ethan for his bravery once again. Lara approached him, her eyes shining with admiration. You saved everyone," she said softly. "I can't believe how calm and strong you are." "I just did what I could." "That's all anyone can do," he said, though Lara could see the depth of his courage and selflessness in his eyes. That night, Lara sat by the river reflecting on the events of the past days. She realized that her feelings for Ethan were no longer just gratitude, they were something deeper. She admired him, trusted him, and, most importantly, felt safe with him. She thought about Noah and how happy he was with Ethan around. Slowly, she began to understand that perhaps the law had not forced her into a trap, but had introduced someone who could become a true partner in her life. Ethan, meanwhile, was thinking about Lara. He admired her strength, her devotion to Noah, and her courage in facing the pressure of tradition. He respected her desire for independence and was determined to ensure that any decision about their future would come from her heart, not just the law. Over the next few weeks, the village watched as their relationship evolved. Lara and Ethan spent time together, not as strangers bound by obligation, but as people learning to trust, respect, and care for one another. Noah's laughter, the quiet moments by the river, and the shared experiences in the village gradually deepened their bond. Though Lara had once resisted the law, she began to see it in a new light. It was not just a rule or a constraint, it was a bridge that had brought two hearts together. She realized that bravery, kindness, and trust could turn obligation into choice and fear into something beautiful. By the end of this period, Lara understood that her feelings for Ethan had grown beyond admiration. She had begun to respect him, rely on him, and even feel a spark of affection she could not ignore. The law, once a source of fear, now seemed like a path toward a connection that could be nurtured, chosen, and cherished. The river, ever present, reflected these changes. It had been a source of danger, then gratitude, and now hope. Lara realized that life could change in an instant, and that courage, compassion, and love often arrived in the most unexpected ways. As the stars appeared over Riverview, Lara felt a quiet excitement mixed with anticipation. She knew the coming days would bring more challenges, choices, and moments that would test their hearts, but for the first time she felt ready to face them. Not with fear, but with trust, hope, and a growing belief in the power of fate, courage, and love. And so, the bond between Lara and Ethan, forged in danger and tempered by trust, grew stronger. The ancient law had set the stage, but it was their hearts, their actions, and their choices that would determine what came next. The story was far from over, and the coming days promised challenges, revelations, and the possibility of a love neither had expected, but both might come to cherish. The morning sun rose gently over Riverview, casting a soft, golden light across the river. The village was calm, peaceful, and alive with the sounds of everyday life. Birds singing, children laughing, and the gentle rush of water over smooth stones. Yet for Lara, this morning felt different. Today was the day she knew she had to make a choice. For weeks, her life had been intertwined with Ethan's. He had become a constant presence, helping her with chores, playing with Noah, and quietly showing her the courage, kindness, and patience that had first drawn her attention. The villagers watched closely, some with curiosity, others with silent approval, but Lara knew that the final decision rested solely in her heart. She stepped outside her small cottage and found Ethan by the river, skipping stones with Noah. The boy's laughter filled the air, and Ethan's calm voice guided him patiently. Lara paused, observing them both. Her heart swelled with gratitude and warmth. She had once feared the law, but now she saw it not as a chain, but as a thread connecting her life to someone who had proven himself trustworthy, selfless, and kind. Ethan noticed her standing there and waved with a small smile. Lara returned the gesture, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She took a deep breath and walked toward them. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning," Ethan replied, his voice warm and steady. "Noah is teaching me how to skip stones today. Want to join us?" Lara nodded and knelt beside her son, feeling the cool water on her hands. As she tossed a stone gently across the river, she realized how much she had come to rely on Ethan, not just for Noah's safety, but for her own peace of mind. His presence had become a source of comfort, trust, and even quiet joy. After a while, Ethan suggested they sit on the riverbank and talk. Lara agreed, feeling a flutter of anticipation in her chest. The air was filled with the scent of fresh water and the soft rustle of leaves. creating a perfect moment for reflection. "Laura," Ethan began, his voice calm but sincere, "I know this law has been difficult for you. I understand your fear and hesitation. I want you to know that whatever decision you make, I will respect it. I don't want this to be about obligation. I want it to be about choice." Lara looked at him, her eyes searching his face. She saw honesty, patience, and care. She realized that he truly meant what he said. For the first time, the fear that had haunted her for weeks began to fade, replaced by a quiet certainty that whatever she chose would be based on her heart, not just tradition. I've thought a lot about this," Laura admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "At first I was afraid. I didn't know you, and the law, it felt like it was forcing me into something I couldn't control. But these past weeks have changed everything. I've seen who you are, how brave, kind, and patient you are, not just with Noah, but with everyone in the village. And I've realized that my feelings for you, they are not just gratitude. They are something more." Ethan's eyes softened, and he reached out to gently take her hand. "Laura, hearing you say that means more than words can express. I've admired your strength, your devotion to Noah, and your courage in facing this law. I never wanted to force anything upon you, but I hoped perhaps we could find a way to care for each other." Lara felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear this time, but from relief and joy. She realized that the law, which had once seemed like a burden, had led her to someone who could share her life, protect her son, and love her with sincerity and respect. "I choose you, Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady now, filled with conviction. "Not because the law requires it, but because I want to. Because I trust you, and because I believe we can build something real together." Ethan's face broke into a smile, a mixture of happiness, relief, and quiet awe. "I promise to honor that choice every day. I will protect you and Noah, and I will do my best to make our lives happy and safe." Noah, sensing the happiness of the moment, ran up to Ethan and hugged him tightly. "You're my hero," he exclaimed. Ethan laughed and hugged the boy back, feeling the warmth and love of the family he had come to cherish. Later that day, the village gathered for a simple celebration. The elders, who had guided the villagers for generations, were present, nodding with approval as Laura and Ethan stood together. The river, which had once been a source of fear and danger, now seemed to reflect the joy and hope of the day. Its gentle flow mirrored the new beginning that had formed between them. Elder Miriam stepped forward, smiling kindly. "Lara and Ethan have chosen each other freely, with respect and trust. The law has brought them together, but it is their hearts that will guide their future. May their lives be filled with happiness, courage, and love." The villagers cheered, some clapping, others smiling warmly. It was a joyous moment, filled with the promise of new beginnings and the affirmation of bravery, kindness, and trust. Lara felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and pressure, and had come through with clarity and choice. As the sun set over the river, casting golden reflections across the water, Laura, Ethan, and Noah sat together on the riverbank. They watched the colors change in the sky, feeling the calmness of the evening. For Laura, the journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had led to trust, love, and hope. For Ethan, the path that had started with an instinctive act of bravery had brought him a family he cherished and a bond he vowed to honor. In that quiet moment, Lara reflected on everything that had happened. The near tragedy at the river, the pressure of the ancient law, the challenges, and the moments of shared trust. She realized that life often works in mysterious ways. Danger and fear can bring people together. Courage can create connections that grow into love. And choice, when guided by the heart, can turn obligation into joy. Noah, noticing the first stars appearing in the sky, pointed excitedly, "Look, Mama! The stars are twinkling." Lara smiled, holding him close. "Yes, sweetheart. And just like the stars, there are bright things in our lives that guide us." She looked at Ethan, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and affection. And some of those bright things are people. People who come into our lives when we least expect them. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And we'll face everything together as a family," he said. The three of them sat by the river, watching the stars reflect on the water. The river, once a symbol of danger, now symbolized hope, courage, and the unexpected ways life can bring people together. Lara felt a quiet joy knowing that she had faced fear, embraced choice, and opened her heart to a future filled with love. The villagers, watching from nearby, felt a sense of peace and satisfaction as well. The law, centuries old, had served its purpose. It had honored bravery, protected a child, and ultimately led two hearts to meet and choose one another freely. It was a reminder that traditions, when combined with respect and understanding, could guide people toward happiness rather than restrict them. As night fell over Riverview, Laura, Ethan, and Noah returned to their home, feeling the warmth of family and the promise of a shared life. The stars shone brightly above, as if celebrating the courage, kindness, and love that had brought them together. For Laura, the river would always be a reminder of the day her life changed, the day fear turned into hope, the day gratitude blossomed into love, and the day choice and courage created a new beginning. For Ethan, it would always remind him of the power of small acts, bravery, and the way genuine care can change lives. And for Noah, it would forever be the river where he had been saved and where he had found the beginnings of a family built on love, trust, and courage. And so in Riverview, a new chapter began, not just for Laura, Ethan, and Noah, but for the village as well. A chapter that celebrated bravery, honored tradition, and showed that even the most unexpected events could lead to joy, connection, and the promise of a happy future. The story that began with a single moment of danger at the river had blossomed into a journey of courage, trust, and love, a journey that would continue for many years, filled with laughter, challenges, and the quiet beauty of life lived together, heart to heart.